friends around the world, and welcome to Caravan to Midnight. And I feel exactly that way. And I think that we should do that. I think we should just do it all the time, spontaneously. Maybe people will get the idea. You know, this is from CNN, of all things, entertainment, from quite a while ago. Actually, this is from 2014, March 27, 2014. This 1976 film starring Peter Finch as a disintegrating news anchor named Howard Beale has been dubbed, possibly by CNN at least, the angriest movie ever made. Beale ranted in the film's most famous speech, "Everybody's out of work, scared of losing their job, the dollar buys a nickel's worth, banks are going bust, shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter, punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it." So when I woke up this morning, I did the usual thing. Coffee. Okay, I'm firing on 5. A couple more slurps. Okay, I'm firing on 6. Here we go. Let's go take a look. Oh, that's just great. An ardent Bernie supporter decides to take his rifle to the baseball practice and kill as many Republicans as possible. However you may regard Rush Limbaugh, I think he's certainly the greatest American broadcaster, maybe ever. I don't know how he does it. I really don't. If you turn on his program, he just talks and talks and talks. I can't believe he hasn't exploded yet. But he's clearly a brilliant man, and that's just how I see it. Now, I know that he makes a lot of calls that don't turn out to be the right calls, meaning he makes predictions sometimes that don't come to pass. Well, his crystal ball doesn't work any better than anybody else's, I guess. But this is very interesting. I want to take this right from his page, because there's plenty of other stuff to get into to reinforce the point. Now, I warn you in advance, I'm a little bit wild, so you might want to clear out the women folk and the children, because, I don't know, you may hear a DA or just the A by itself, but I promise no F-bombs or anything that would be, that would get you thrown off the public airwaves, all right? So there was a mass shooting in a movie. Now he's talking about that thing that happened up in Aurora. Brian Ross, ABC News, when there was a mass shooting in Colorado. Brian Ross's first instinct was to try to find a connection between the shooter and conservatism. So he got the shooter's name, and the first thing he did instinctively was look at the roster of Tea Party organizations to see if he could find the guy's name there. You note these things don't just happen. Conservatives don't do these things. Much as the media is waiting constantly for it to happen, it doesn't. Things like this are perpetuated by genuinely insane, out-of-balance people, or people like this guy Hodgkinson. You know, the guy who took his rifle to the congressional baseball practice session. At any rate, he found a name on a Tea Party roster in Colorado that was very close to the shooter's name, so Brian Ross goes on ABC and says, quote, "We can't be sure, but the shooter could possibly be a member of the Tea Party." Well, he knows as well as anybody, you don't even have to confirm it, just put it out there as a possibility and let your buddies on Twitter take care of the rest, and they did, and for a while, the narrative was that the mass shooter in Colorado was Tea Party. So it's kind of poetic justice that Brian Ross today could not cover this up. Ross says he's, politically active, according to his social media. On Facebook just a few days ago, he was critical of Trump. He said, "Trump and company need to be destroyed because Trump is destroying democracy. We know he's 66. He ran a home inspection business, which seems to have gone out of business sometime last year." Well, that'd be under Obama's watch, wouldn't it? Yeah, Obama, the would-be Mandela of the current age. Psst, loser. Rush goes on to say, home inspection, where this guy lost his license to inspect homes. But that doesn't even scratch the surface of the guy who the guy is, and the hatred for Donald Trump that he harbored. Look, I know people are able to arrive at opinions independently of stimulation or influence. I understand this. But I've been worried for quite a while about the cumulative effect or impact of this constant anti-Trump hysteria everywhere in mainstream media. New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC. It's hysteria. It's lies. It's things that are completely manufactured about Trump personally, about Trump and Russia, about climate change, about any number of things. As you know, I have been seriously, folks, seriously in a humanitarian sense, not political. I have been very concerned about what all of this is going to do to the average base Democrat voter. I have sensed them getting more and more fringe and imbalanced. And the evidence for it is everywhere in the things that they tweet. They openly promote violence and advocate some of the most despicable things happening to their political enemies. The hatred is raw. It is undiluted. It's just savage. These are the mainstream of the Democrat base, and I don't have any doubt that they're being radicalized. They are being radicalized. In this case, this guy's favorite TV show, Comedy Central, Bill Maher, left-wing comedians, John Oliver on HBO, half the people at Comedy Central. Rachel Maddow was his all-time favorite. He thought she should run for president. I watched that ridiculous person last night. I never saw such a pathetic, juvenile display of stupidity come over anybody's broadcast ever. The hands are all over, and because she's just so S-sure and so S-smart that she's just got this. And it was one moronic statement repeated over and over again with slight variation. Vacuous. Completely vacuous. Oh, she might be fun at a party or something, but she's one of these people who just won't shut up and laughs continuously, like for hours on end. But as far as any actual content, none. It's fodder for idiots. Sorry, Rachel. You suck, okay? These people have radicalized guys like this all over the country. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that while all of this has gone on since this program began, it'll be 30 years just a month or so. Since this program began, the American media has attempted to portray you people in this audience as being identical to the guy that shot up members of Congress today in Virginia. You know as well as I do. You've heard it. You've listened to them say it. They've tried to characterize me and you as agents of hate and all of this, and it's all rooted in nothing more than political, ideological differences. And it's been going on for I don't know how long. Every time there's been a mass shooting or an act of terror, I guarantee you the first thing the media has done, and this was really par for the course in the first 15 to 20 years before Fox News kicked up, the first thing the media did when there was any kind of a mass crime or shooting is that they tried as hard as they could to find evidence that the perpetrator was a listener of this program and then of talk radio and then later a viewer of Fox News. They've been doing this since the program began, and they have yet to be able to find one example where that linkage has been established. Not one. I've been very sensitive to it, Rush writes, or spoke. The reason I've been sensitive to it is because of the way it characterizes you, the audience to this program. As a result, I'm sure you're aware of it too. Now, I do believe that the message on this program is in no way related to hate. It is not fatalistic. This program each and every day is nothing but upbeat and inspiring, and of course we talk about things going wrong, but from the point of trying to fix them, from the standpoint of it's possible to fix them, and that it's necessary to do so. And to have it categorized as something other than that has been something that's common for 20 or 30 years, and then this event happened today, and I think it's something I've honestly been worried was going to happen because I don't think you can bombard people with this kind of hatred from the time they were in daycare all the way up to kindergarten and then middle school, high school. You get them into college, and they start watching their late-night comedians, and all this stuff is just, some of it's disguised as comedy, but it's all coming from a foundation of anger and rage and hate. We had a drive-by call. We had a caller from Houston who has demanded that I stop calling this a shooting and refer to it instead as a matter. That calling it a shooting is judgmental. We don't know that it was a shooting. The FBI hasn't confirmed it was a shooting. They haven't confirmed the motivation. They haven't confirmed the congressmen who were shot were actual targets. Meanwhile, they know the Russians did whatever they didn't do. Here's Bernie Sanders condemning the act of his supporter. Sanders says, I've just been informed that the alleged shooter at the Republican baseball practice this morning is someone who apparently volunteered on my presidential campaign. Rush says, apparently? I am sickened by this despicable act, says Sanders, and let me be as clear as I can be. Violence of any kind is unacceptable in our society, and I condemn this action in the strongest possible terms. Rush goes, okay, so Bernie's condemning the action of his alleged shooter that was apparently a volunteer in his campaign, that was cheated on by Hillary Clinton and the Democrat National Committee. The Bernie people have got to be doubly angry. They hate Trump, they hate the Russians, and they also have been told that Hillary Clinton and Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz rigged the primaries against crazy Bernie. Now, this is so crazy. If you look at this guy's Facebook page, the various television celebrities, hosts, personalities, and shows that he watches or watched, it's all this Russia story, everything. There's some climate change in there, obviously there would be, but it's astounding, folks. This guy was driven to pick up a gun and start shooting people because of the hatred he harbored. Now, I have a question. If this had not happened, as it has happened for the last 7 months, would this guy be as enraged? Would he have been as he was? Well, we can't know. With numerous assassination plays and television shows and so forth that have now permeated the popular culture, it is, as I say, I've run out of descriptive words. This guy's Facebook page reads and looks exactly like your average CNN 10-person panel on Trump and Russia. And when you really stop looking at this as an observer and actually immerse yourself in it, you realize that all of it, it's worse than a lie because everybody involved in it knows there isn't any evidence. Everybody involved in this has known since early January that Donald Trump was not even a target of this investigation, that couldn't have found anything because there isn't anything to find. And since in January, CNN, New York Times, ABC, you name it, have led every one of their believers, listeners, viewers to believe that Trump was involved. And worse than that, they've raised expectations with the passing of every month that the day is approaching that we're going to find and disclose the truth and we're going to be able to impeach Donald Trump. They started talking about writing articles of impeachment, all of it taking place around and about nothing, something entirely made up. I know I'm being redundant. It's the only way I know how to emphasize this. I can relate to that one. This is how their heroes, their idols, their news leaders, their political leaders, this is how they keep them engaged. With hate and the expectation that there's going to be a reward for all this hate, that the hate is going to be justified, that the hate is going to be rewarded because this evil guy Trump, who stole what's ours, is going to get his, and he's going to go to jail, and he might even get the death penalty, and we're going to see to it that he gets the max punishment. I hope Rush doesn't mind that I read some of what he said, because I agree with him completely. Atheists demand town remove these decades-old welcome signs, but one group is pushing back. Albertsons reveals supermarket meltdown. Oh, supermarket meltdown? Really? Is our food being threatened? Oh, no, not that. Well, that'll be next, I guess. Oh, boy. By the way, got a couple of good conversations coming up for you here in a few minutes. Albertsons reveals a supermarket meltdown in global deep discounters promise price war and stagnating U.S. market. Aldi's $5 billion bet at a brutal time. Now get this. Today, Albertsons explained in an amended S-4 filing for a debt exchange offering just how tough things have gotten for traditional supermarket chains. Now, this sounds boring, but I don't think it is. As is so often the case, there's a private equity angle to it. Albertsons was acquired in 2005 LBO by a group of PE firms led by Cerberus. What investment company would name itself Cerberus? You know who Cerberus is, or what Cerberus is. It's the dog that guards the gates of hell. In January 2015, it acquired Safeway to eliminate some competition. It then wanted to sell its shares to the public, but in October 2015, as brick-and-mortar retail began to melt down, it scrapped its initial public offering. The filing's most revealing data are same-store sales on a quarterly basis through fourth quarter 2016, comparing year-over-year sales growth at stores that have been open in the current and prior year. What's the bottom line? Get this. A German grocery store chain, deep discounter Lidl, L-I-D-L, with 10,000 stores in 27 European countries, has plans to open as many as 600 stores in the U.S., it revealed in May. Its first store will open in just a few days, on June 15. It expects to have 100 stores along the East Coast a year from now. It said it would undercut competitors by up to 50%. I think you see where we're headed here. How about this one? This is absolutely unbelievable. It's going to make you slightly sick. 500 Seattle kids bought and sold for sex every year, says a nonprofit. Stolen Youth, a nonprofit that aims to raise awareness and money to help survivors and stop trafficking, held a vigil to honor sex trafficking victims. Marin Stewart, a survivor who's from Seattle and whose journey of sexual exploitation started in a strip club. I was 18 when I got into the life. I thought I would do it for 2 weeks as a means of survival. My intention was to do it for 2 weeks just to pick myself up, and it turned into 22 years. During that time, Stewart was trafficked in Taiwan, Japan, Hawaii, and here in the Pacific Northwest before she felt she could leave at age 41. It takes a minimum of 7 times of attempting to get out before you're finally able to get out. I got out simply and only because of Jesus Christ. Stolen Youth Executive Director Nicole DiCario fears more youth trying to survive on the street could be exploited, especially given the area's youth homeless problems. Oh, in Seattle? Isn't that a so-called, I'm not going to call it a liberal town because there's nothing liberal about them. Isn't that a left-wing progressive city? I think it is. If you can imagine these cases of a homeless youth, they're doing what they can to survive, and in some cases, they need to sell themselves. DiCario says about 500 Seattle youths are trafficked for sex every year. The youngest person trafficked in the nonprofit, or that the nonprofit has heard of, was 11 years old. That's America, right? Well, people caught trafficking underage girls should be thrown in prison for life, and not a very nice one either. Those found guilty of trafficking girls who are under the age of 13, say 11, 12, and younger, should simply be put to death, inexpensively, just like the Chinese do it. Pop, right in the back of the head. Next. And that is that. Put that on YouTube. Now, this is a little short thing from MarketWatch.com. It's pretty good. A MarketWatch, that is. The story is pretty bad. It's about college students. College students would give up their friends' privacy for free pizza. Carrie Paul wrote this one. It doesn't take much to get people to change their security priorities. Americans may claim to value privacy, but their actions suggest otherwise. Nearly 3/4 of people, 74% of the U.S., believe it's very important to be in control of who can get information about them, and 60% say they would never feel comfortable sharing their email contacts. However, the vast majority of college students, 98%, gave away their friends' emails when promised free pizza. A recent study of 3,108 Massachusetts Institute of Technology students published in the National Bureau of Economics Research. 3,108 MIT students they gave away their friends' emails when promised free pizza. Here's a quote. Whereas people say they care about privacy, they're willing to relinquish private data quite easily when incentivized to do so. However, it also included an experiment in which students were asked for the contacts of their closest friends. Half the students were given a small incentive in the form of an order of pizza to share with friends, and 98% of those shared emails. Fewer students, 94%, gave up friends' emails addresses when not given any incentives. In the non-incentivized group, 6% input fake emails to protect their friends' identities. Not giving an email address was also not an option. The latest study has a number of implications, researchers concluded, particularly in the realm of privacy policies and consent. Christian Catalini, an author of the study, said the results show people either overstate how much they care about privacy when asked in surveys, or else that they do care about privacy but make rushed decisions online without considering future consequences. Free pizza, and you give your friends details up. YouTube star Austin Jones arrested on child pornography charges, according to The Hollywood Reporter. Oh, I'm sorry. From the Idaho State Journal. This is another college student story. College student caught shoplifting from Walmart said she was studying kleptomania. This person is clearly a moron with a big horrible zit, which she has scratched on her forehead, making it even worse. Oh, Lord. This was published just a few hours ago. Lydia Marie Cormani from Gillette, Wyoming, a Wyoming college student who told officers she was working on a term paper on kleptomania after she was caught shoplifting, faces 3 felony charges. 23-year-old Lydia Marie Cormani was arrested on June 5th. I thought that was the author. Oh, well. After trying to leave Walmart with nearly $1,900 worth of merchandise. Court records say investigators later found thousands of dollars worth of stolen items in her dorm room at Gillette College. Cormani told officers she began shoplifting after being forced to move into a new dorm away from her roommate, who had many of the household items. She said she was caught once when she tried to leave Walmart with 3 flat-screen TVs. Cormani made an initial appearance on June 8, did not enter a plea. Preliminary hearing set for Wednesday. So she's just another moron that decided to steal. Who needs 3 big-screen TVs? You can't, this should all come from you really just can't make this stuff up. You just can't. This one has to do with corporate media and CIA. Corporate media just exposed CIA using prostitutes to drug victims with LSD for mind control studies. I wonder if this is true. This is by Claire Bernish from Activist Post. Your government will indeed perform experiments on you if it so chooses. While some are undertaken with Nazi-esque malevolence, like the atrocities committed in the Tuskegee study, a 40-year operation, it says infecting innocent black men with syphilis. Well, they can't be that innocent, or they couldn't have been infected, could they? The fact is that these people already had syphilis. They just were tracking the progression of it, and that in itself was pretty rough, but they didn't run around, white people didn't run around infecting black men with syphilis so they could study them. That's just wrong. So I'm about ready. If this doesn't get better, I'm going to dump it. Part of the notorious MK Ultra program, Midnight Climax, every bit as lascivious as one would expect from an agency founded in duplicity, might be one of CIA's most revealing experiments in thought control through substances, as well as its lesser-known entree into the business of drugs and prostitution. And now, the corporate mainstream media has finally decided to address the abhorrent crimes committed under the green light by nefarious CIA Director Alan Dulles, who signed off on MK Ultra, and thus its iterations on April 13, 1953. One part in a series on the History Channel, America's War on Drugs, reveals in documents and interviews how CIA paid prostitutes to entice unwitting working-class Johns with illicit sex in order to dose them unknowingly with pure LSD, one of the psychedelics exploding into America's drug scene in the 60s, for the project known as Midnight Climax. Amid fears the Russians might perfect mind control before the U.S. could do so, CIA turned unapologetically to experiments with LSD, leaving victims none the wiser, setting up fake brothels in San Francisco and later Marin County, where hired prostitutes would bring the agency's prey, the unremarkable men of the lower and working classes who would be unlikely to retaliate if anything went awry. So, Richard Stratton, a former hippie pot kingpin ultimately caught and imprisoned, explains of Midnight Climax for a preview of the History Channel show. The CIA was scared stiff the KGB was going to get all this LSD and come over and start dosing people, so we bought every drop of LSD in existence at that point. They gave it to George White and let George White start dosing people. Okay. You know Macron, Emmanuel Macron, a 39-year-old, he is now the president of France. Poor France. They don't even know who they are anymore. You know, that's the problem. Do you know what people do usually, when they lose their identity? And what does that even mean? To lose your identity. You don't know where you belong. You can't relate to the people around you, to your physical environment, none of it. You don't know where you fit. Am I a white guy or am I a black guy trapped in a white guy's body, or am I an anarchist or a libertarian? Am I conservative? Am I atheist? Am I progressive? What am I? I could tell you something, it's race-based, but there's this group in South Africa they call them the Coloreds. You got a lot of Indians there, in Durban especially. That's the highest concentration of actual Indians from India outside of actual India. But the black-white hybrids are called the Coloreds. They are rejected by the blacks, and they are rejected by the whites. They have lost their identity. So they stay to themselves. And you know what the #1 pastime is? Getting as deep into alcoholism as they can possibly go without killing themselves. And they do that too. That is the poster case for a loss of identity. In the meantime, back to little Emmanuel Macron. He wants to turn France's state of emergency into a permanent reality. This is from the Gateway Pundit. France was first put into a state of emergency on November 13, 2015, after attack in Paris killed 130 people. French activists and lawyers are warning that a new bill will make the country stay in a permanent state of emergency, effectively making all of the measures that are put in place during a state of emergency the permanent law of the land. Now pay attention. This bill will turn warrantless property searches as well as house arrests into everyday life. Protest marches are to be banned under the bill. Places of worship that are suspected of sharing extremist views, along with electronic tagging for surveillance purposes, are also on the docket. The power shift would absolutely be absurd and would effectively turn France into a pseudo-police state. Perhaps the globalists are using the threat of Islam to consolidate their power through a new police freedoms. And wait a minute, through new police freedoms that limit their citizens' power. French president, according to the Daily Caller, wants to end France's 19-month state of emergency by effectively turning it into a permanent reality. They're telling us we're ending the state of emergency, but they're actually making it eternal. It's an intellectual scam. Marie-Jeanne Naudy, vice president of a union representing judges, told French newspaper Le Figaro in a June 8th article, "Imagine a fascist-like group rises to power. All the legal instruments would be in place to commit abuse." Yep. Well, according to Natural News, there are a number of reasons why Elon Musk is a fast-talking hustler who preys upon scientifically illiterate bureaucrats to siphon billions of dollars from taxpayers. You know, he's been called the most corrupt CEO in the world. How about that? Elon Musk. Now, this is an article from Rutherford.org. Lynching Free Speech. The Intolerant State of America by John W. Whitehead. We've spoken to him on the program before, as you may recall. And here's a quote. What are the defenders of free speech to do? The sad fact is, this fundamental freedom is on its heels across America. Politicians of both parties want to use the power of government to silence their foes. Some in the university community seek to drive it from their campuses. And an entire generation of Americans is being taught that free speech should be curtailed as soon as it makes someone else feel uncomfortable. On the current trajectory, our nation's dynamic marketplace of ideas soon will be replaced by either disengaged intellectual silos or even a stagnant ideological conformity. Few things would be so disastrous for our nation and the well-being of our citizenry. That's William Ruger. Free speech is central to our dignity as humans. Here's the thing. If Americans don't learn how to get along, at the very least agreeing to disagree and respecting each other's right to subscribe to beliefs and opinions that may be offensive, hateful, intolerant, or merely different, then we're going to soon find out we have no rights whatsoever to speak, assemble, agree, disagree, protest, opt in, opt out, or forge our own paths as individuals. The government will lock down the nation at the slightest provocation. It is ready, willing, and able to impose martial law within 24 hours. Indeed, the government has been anticipating and preparing for civil unrest for years now, as evidenced by the buildup of guns and tanks and militarized police and military training drills and threat assessments and extremism reports and surveillance systems and private prisons. Connect the dots, people. The government doesn't care about who you voted for in the presidential election, or whether you think the Civil War was fought over states' rights or slavery. It doesn't care about your race or gender or religion or sexual orientation. When the police state cracks down, it will not discriminate. We'll all be muzzled together. We will all be jailed together. We will all be viewed as a collective enemy to be cataloged, conquered, and caged. Thus, the last thing we need to do is to play into the government's hands by turning on one another, turning in one another, and giving the government standing army an excuse to take over. The police state could not ask for a better citizenry than one that carries out its own censorship, spying, and policing. This is how you turn a nation of free people into extensions of the omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent police state, and in the process turn a citizenry against each other. It's a brilliant ploy, with the added bonus that while the citizenry remains focused on and distrustful of each other, they are incapable of presenting a united front against the threats posed by the government and its cabal of constitution-destroying agencies and corporate partners. Unfortunately, we have already become a nation of snowflakes, snitches, and book burners, a legalistic, intolerant, elitist, squealing bystander nation eager to report fellow citizens to the police for the slightest offense. Mind you, once the police are called in with their ramped-up protocols, battlefield mindset, militarized weapons, uniforms and equipment, and war zone tactics, it's a process that is near impossible to turn back, and one that too often ends in tragedy for all those involved. So how do we stop this train from barreling down the tracks past the police state and straight into martial law? Let's start with a little more patience, a lot more tolerance, and a civics lesson on the First Amendment, as my good friend Nat Hentoff That inveterate champion of the First Amendment once observed, quote, "The quintessential difference between a free nation, as we profess to be, and a totalitarian state is that here everyone, including a foe of democracy, has the right to speak his mind. What this means is opening the door to more speech, not less, even if that speech is offensive to some." We haven't done ourselves or the nation any favors by becoming so fearfully polite, careful to avoid offense, and largely unwilling to be labeled intolerant, hateful, or closed-minded, that we've eliminated words, phrases, and symbols from public discourse. The result is a nation where no one really says what they really think anymore, at least if it runs counter to the prevailing views. Intolerance is the new scarlet letter of our day, a badge to be worn in shame and humiliation, deserving of society's fear, loathing, and utter banishment from society. For those who dare to voice an opinion that runs counter to the accepted norms, retribution is swift. They are shamed, shouted down, silenced, censored, fired, cast out, and generally relegated to the dust heap of ignorant, mean-spirited bullies who are guilty of various word crimes. We have entered a new age, whereas commentator Mark Stein notes, we have to tiptoe around on ever thinner eggshells, and the forces of tolerance are intolerant of anything less than full-blown celebratory approval. In such a climate of intolerance, there can be no freedom of speech, freedom of expression, or freedom of thought. We have become a nation of snowflakes. We have allowed our fears for our safety, fear of each other, fear of being labeled racist or hateful or prejudiced, etc., to trump our freedom of speech and muzzle us far more effectively than any government edict could. Ultimately, the war on free speech, and that's exactly what it is a war being waged by Americans against other Americans. It's a war that is driven by fear. By bottling up dissent, we have created a pressure cooker of stifled misery and discontent that is now bubbling over and fomenting even more hate, distrust, and paranoia among portions of the populace. The First Amendment is a steam valve. It allows people to speak their minds, air their grievances, and contribute to a larger dialogue that hopefully results in a more just world. When there is no steam valve to release the pressure, frustration builds, anger builds, and people become more volatile and desperate to force a conversation. The problem, as I see it, is that we've allowed ourselves to be persuaded that we need someone else to think and speak for us. The result is a society in which we've stopped debating among ourselves, stopped thinking for ourselves, and stopped believing that we can fix our own problems and resolve our own differences. Not only has free speech become a politically incorrect four-letter word, profane, obscene, uncouth, not to be uttered in so-called public places, but in more and more cases, the government deems free speech to be downright dangerous, and in some instances, illegal. In Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, reading is banned, and books are burned in order to suppress dissenting ideas, while televised entertainment is used to anesthetize the population and render them easily pacified, distracted, and controlled. In Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, serious literature, scientific thinking, and experimentation are banned as subversive, while critical thinking is discouraged through the use of conditioning, social taboos, and inferior education. Likewise, expressions of individuality, independence, and morality are viewed as vulgar and abnormal. And finally, in George Orwell's 1984, Big Brother does away with all undesirable and unnecessary words and meanings, even going so far as to routinely rewrite history and punish thought crimes. And in almost every episode of Twilight Zone, Rod Serling urged viewers to unlock their minds and free themselves of prejudice, hate, violence, and fear. We're developing a new citizenry, Serling declared. one that will be very selective about cereals and automobiles, but won't be able to think. It's time to start thinking for ourselves again. It's time to start talking to each other. It's time to start listening more and shouting less. Most of all, it's time to start acting like people who will choose dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. One last little bit. I want you to hear this. As Dahlia Lithwick concluded for Slate, to guarantee an escape from conflict, from violence, requires censorship. To have free speech in this moment, when the stakes are so high, is to live with fear. This is not an easy thing to confront or to accept. Conversation might still be our best chance of getting out of this mess. Free speech is just free speech. It takes actual humans making the effort to talk to each other to transform speech into something more vital and more valuable. Conversations don't always work. They may sometimes go wrong, horribly, terribly wrong. The First Amendment will never be able to protect us from horrible words and horrific acts. It does guarantee that we'll keep talking. And so we will. Okay? There's a lot more, but enough for now. We'll catch up on some more of it tomorrow, all right? Okay, I need to mention a few things to you, some things I believe that you will like. 2 tickets are available to the Red Pill Expo. Send your name and number to Caravan, the number 2, midnight@gmail.com. Caravan2midnight.com. Wrong. Caravan2midnight@gmail.com. Gmail. Caravan, the number 2, midnight@gmail.com. Okay, I got it. Now, make sure you can go to Montana and have a place to stay up there. This is only for access to the conference. It's a main ticket and a partner ticket, and the value is $472. 472 U.S. buckaroos. The Geetus, the Moolah, the Filthy Lucre. 472. So did you get that? 2 tickets available for the Red Pill Expo. Send name and number to caravan2midnight@gmail.com. Don't write 20, just this once. Use the number 2, Caravan2midnight. All right. Now, David Janda. Oh, yeah. David Janda, Dr. Janda. Oh, look, I just happen to have his book right here. The Awakening of a Surgeon. A Life of Prevention, Health, and Hope. David H. Janda, M.D., a grunt on the front lines of health care delivery. He's a great guy. And we have some books. It's right there on the homepage of caravan2midnight.com. And I have a surprise announcement for you. In just a few days, Saturday night on Arc Midnight, 9 to midnight Central Time. 9 to midnight Central Time. Used to be 10 to midnight, now it's 3 hours. 9 to midnight Central Time on radio station KLIF. And, I might add, coming to a radio station near you in the not-too-distant future. Working on that. We're hot and heavy into it, all right? Now, still got that deal going. If you sign up for a year, Caravan to Midnight, 700 and how many shows? 758 programs as of this episode, right now, in archive, for you. $60 for the year. Well, are you interested in money? Do you like Joseph Meyer? Do you like his Straight Money Analysis newsletter? Well, if you join us right now for $80, you'll get the March, June, and September newsletters written by Joseph Meyer, been in the financial business for 50 years, and a year subscription to Caravan to Midnight. Year membership to Caravan, 3/4 of a year subscription to Joe Meyer's newsletter. I don't like to call you guys subscribers. You're not subscribers, you're members. And I don't refer to you as subscribers or your membership fees as subscriptions. I don't. We're a family. You know it, and I know it too. And I can tell by the things that you write on Facebook and the stuff that you tweet. And we're going to keep it that way. So 75% of a year's subscription to Joe Meyer's newsletter, Straight Money Analysis. Go check it out, his website, straightmoneyanalysis.com. And a year's membership to Caravan to Midnight for $80. You can't beat it with a stick. Okay? Can't beat it with your Ray Donovan edition baseball bat. It's unbeatable. Now, something else. Chuck Coppice, who was on last night's program, his book is on our front page by now, selling it for $19.95. The book is America's Financial Reckoning Day. No, wait. You don't just get the book for $19.95. You also get a 2-hour DVD with it and a special report from Chuck. And that's $19.95, all right? And this is what he wrote. Since 2008, we've gone from a financial crisis to an economic crisis, now a monetary crisis, a crisis of confidence in U.S. fiscal policy, central planning, and forward guidance. The U.S. has an institutionalized warfare and welfare state that is unsustainable. Wow, warfare and welfare. Oh, I get it. The bullets and the bandages. It's unsustainable. Structural demographics that are leading to a financial reckoning day with the largest debt pyramid in the world. China and other nations are calling for a de-Americanized or de-dollarized world as they import massive amounts of gold from the West to the East. It is a general theme in my book that the U.S. will lose its reserve currency status based on Triffin's dilemma, and a monetary reset will include a new SDR settlement currency being proposed right now by the International Monetary Fund. Structurally, the U.S. is in worse shape than the EU Eurozone, and this fits into a prophetic matrix that envisions the rise of Europe as mentioned in ancient biblical texts. But it appears it's not going to be a Christian uprising, don't you find? But an Islamic uprising, with the money problems to go with it, don't you know? We're at a tipping point in the social order as America's militarized surveillance state is preparing for civil unrest, as noted by John Whitehead, just read it. And a major crisis will likely be exploited by powerful forces at the highest level to restructure our country into a new regional trading bloc. People should be prepared with some sensible contingency planning that I will share, along with a message of hope and inspiration from a Christian worldview. We are in a battle between good and evil, but the darkest hour is before the dawn. And this is also why we pray, thy kingdom come. Good will triumph over evil. Think it over. Look. If you're like me at all, you always see the stuff hitting the fan farther down the timeline. I mean, I used to be this way. When I was a young buck, I thought, yeah, whatever. You know, not really, but there was a part of me that was like, I don't think this is going to happen right now. I think we've got some time. And by the time that time has gone by the time it's time for the stuff to hit the fan, we will have sorted something out. Well, as the years went by, I returned to something I've known really since I was a kid, which is everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And once you reach the end of something, cycle repeats. So we've been in the beginning, we've gone through the middle, and now I believe that we're reaching the end of this outrageously complex cycle that just seems to get more out of shape with every passing day. So, once the end has come, well, a new beginning occurs. And I want you to be around for that, and I want you to be in good shape when it comes, because it will. The odds compel it, and the Bible prophesies it. So think it over. You will not do better than the Bible if you want to understand what's happening to you, what's happening to us, and where we're going. The Bible is a history book of things not yet in the past. Look, It predicted almost 4,000 years beforehand that Israel would become a nation again in one day. And it did. In one day, it was like, okay, boom, done. But that's just for starters. And more on the whole Israeli-Jewish Zionist thing later. We don't have time for it today, but we'll make time for it in the not-too-distant future because there are some clarifications that need to be made. And also a few things I think you'll find enlightening and even comforting. And it will help you understand even more of what's happening, who's doing it, the difference between a real Jew, a false Jew, and a hardcore Zionist, and how it relates to Christians. It's there. It just requires a lot of study to sort it out. So you do, and you condense it into an understandable form, and then pass it on. That's what we do here, all right? I got another little deal for you. Ready for this? All right. We have 13 of these left. Ooh, lucky 13, right? And you can tell how many are left on the site when you go there. It's supposed to be a counter on there, and by all accounts, it is there. I'll check it myself in a while. $35. $35. And about $13.50 in shipping. Those guys aren't cheap anymore. I remember a 1-cent stamp. Maybe you do too. Anyway, look. Fashionable cap. Yes. T-shirt that will actually fit you, your size. Groovy mug to have your coffee or tea from, your proper cup of tea. And an autographed picture from me to you. All right, $35 for all of that. Cap, T-shirt, coffee mug, and a photograph of myself. No cracks. Okay. And once again, David H. Janda, MD's book, The Awakening of a Surgeon, is on the front page. Chuck Coppis's book, America's Financial Reckoning Day, including a 2-hour DVD and special report. $19.95. You can't beat it with a stick. You really can't. Did I say that already? Can't beat it with a stick? How about you can't flog it with a bullwhip? Oh, that's ugly. That's mean. I forget I said anything. We're going to talk with Matthew Bracken about this thing that happened with this moron idiot taking his rifle to the baseball practice. As I was watching Rachel Maddow last night, and then that guy that comes on after her, whoever he is, and then listening to this Democratic congressperson come on and talk with Tucker Carlson. I mean, I got to look at what the MSM is doing. I have to, because otherwise I won't know what they're doing. I can't talk to you about it. It's not like it's like, oh boy, let's watch some Ministry of Smoke and Mirrors. No, that's not really it. But it's really interesting to watch the formula being revealed, and it is simply this. Now let's take George Webb, for example. Right now, George Webb is getting a lot of flack. People are saying he's Mossad. They're saying, oh, well, his brother is actually so-and-so. This is the thing that we have to remember in all of this. If you don't like the message, you attack the messenger. Attack their character. They're a liar. They're this. They're that. They're security services. They're pedophiles. They're whoremongers. Whatever. If you don't like the message, you attack the messenger. If you don't like the messenger, you attack the message. Anybody see any of this going on in the Ministry of Smoke and Mirrors? You bet. Don't fall for it. Let's have a beautiful musical interlude, shall we? And look, it would be helpful. You know, it would be downright nice if you would join Caravan to Midnight. There's the link right down below the screen here. It would be very nice if you would subscribe to the channel. It would be very nice if you would follow us on Twitter at John B. Wells, CTM. And you can find us on Facebook too, just John B. Wells. Just give our page a like, will you? It don't cost nothing. give us a tweet. Give us a tweet rather than a twit. And like us on Facebook and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Caravanners make this program possible. They do. The Caravanners and nothing but. I mean, the Lord enabled the entire thing. I say that goes without saying, but it really needs to be said. It's true. And I got to tell you that while we don't push it, many people have come to faith. And coming to faith will help you. It won't hurt you. And again, it won't cost you a thing except the misery that you experience in your life. That's all it'll cost you. That's what I call a good deal, all right? So, all right, I've said enough for now. Now, look, I warn you. I'm steady now, but I may get aggravated as the show goes on. So we'll bear with each other, all right? All right, good. Hit it.